Hello, everyone. We're so glad you could join us for today's session of ACB Connects. I'm Susan Sands, president of ACB, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to the second in a multi-session series on virtual concerts. In today's session, Virtual Concerts, Nuts and Bolts of Video Production, you will be given insights into the technical magic needed to create, complete, and upload a virtual performance product. To guide us through this process, we welcome the return of our guest, Scott Hosner. ACB Connects is sponsored by the Association of Concert Bands, an international nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster excellence in concert band music through performance, education, and advocacy. Our membership includes concert community bands, band directors, individual members, student members, and corporate members. Everyone who cares about concert bands is welcome. Today's session is presented as a service to our members and as an outreach to the music community. Before I introduce today's presenter, I have just a few words of instruction. For optimal audio, everyone except the presenters has been muted. ACB Connects is being recorded. Today's session will be archived along with the other previously recorded sessions and can be accessed from the ACB Connects page on the ACB website. And finally, today's session will allow for interactive questions during the discussion. If you have any comments or questions, please share these with everyone in the chat, and as many as possible will be addressed. At this time, it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce today's presenter, Scott Hosner. Scott is a trombone player in the Rancho, Cordova River City Concert Band and produces all of their virtual performance projects. He grew up in Sacramento, California, and currently works for the state of California as a healthcare educator and analyst. His hobbies include 3D animation and music performance, which have lent greatly to the success of his band during the pandemic. Our moderator today is Tom Seaton. Tom is a member of the ACB Board of Directors and the music director for the Rancho Cordova River City Concert Band. Now it's time to hear about the nuts and bolts of video production. So I turn the program over to our moderator, Tom Seaton.
Well, good afternoon. It's really great to be here again, and I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to help some of you that have been trying to figure out how to go about doing these virtual recordings. And we have the perfect person for doing that. And another kind of addition to that is that I want to stress that it really pays to get to know the members of your band, because we did not know any of this about Scott until he started sharing some things during our Zoom meetings, and little graphics here and there and little video things behind him and different things he'd do with backgrounds. And we just happened to mention, would you be interested in trying to put something together? And he was willing to do that. And so he's really approached this from a novice end and has shown that you can do it. So we're really looking forward to seeing this and being able to present, being able to do this as a group. And again, just as another nudge reminder, to ask those questions and to put those questions in the chat to everyone so that we make sure that we get to all of them, okay? So at this time, Scott, I'm gonna let you take it away and let's have some fun.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Tom and Susan, I appreciate that. Yeah, so if you joined us last week, we went through the first half of doing this, which is sending out the click track to your musicians with instructions to record, and even the option of sending out a conductor video so that they could play to that while they record themselves. So this would be later in the stage. Everyone is hopefully turned in their videos. You have a good due date for them to get those in by, and you're ready to start working. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There we go. And the first thing I have up here is Google Drive. Now I have one video sitting in the Google Drive that was turned in by our tuba player from the Rancho Cordova River City Concert Band, Tom DeSimone. Actually volunteered a few of them to submit videos so that I could show this process. So I mentioned last week, it's important to have a good file structure, one place on your computer where you keep all of your project files in a good, with folders that clearly label what's what, so it's not just a big mishmash and things aren't hidden all over your computer. So I'm going to save or download, right-clicking on his video, and I'm going to download it to my project folder, which happens to be on my main hard drive. And then I've got a number of folders that I've created as I've been working on this, a place for all audio files, a place for video files, a place for my temporary sound mix, any images that I might use in the project, and then where I want my final products to go. So I'm going to place this in videos with the other videos that I've received so far, clarinet, trumpet, tuba. These are just the MOV or movie files. I also have a few MP4 files that aren't showing because this is filtering those out, but we'll see those in a moment. Of course, it's already there, so I'm not going to re-download it. All right, so once you have all of your videos, and that's what I'm looking at here. I'm working on a small scale project here, but all of this can be scaled up to as many people as you need. I tried to make sure to put a process in place. While it can be a little time consuming, it can be scaled up to 20, 30, 60 musicians, even more if you do one project and then combine it with others. But it's just the time really escalates the more people that you have. So let's see. The first thing we need to do is work on our sound. So for sound, the first tool I'm going to use is called Audacity, and we looked at it last week for creating the click track. It's also great for mixing audio for these videos. So I already have it installed, and this is where you start when there's nothing going on yet, a brand new project. One of the great things about Audacity, and I actually only just recently learned this, which is you can drag video files right into Audacity and edit the sound directly from there. Previously, I was having to strip the audio from the video file, and that required another set of tools, and it was just a big mess. But a friend of mine showed me how to get this into Audacity. So I'm going to start by putting my click track in because I need something to compare everybody to. So here it is. And I'm just dragging it right onto the tool. And there's my click track. So I created this click track using the exact same instructions that I provided at the last ACB Connects meeting, where I have voice prompts as well as the actual click track. And you can hear a little bit of that. So that's for our musicians to synchronize.
Scott, we can't hear that.
Oh, you can't. Let's see. Let me reshare my screen just to make sure that it's coming through properly. Sorry about that.
Clap on the count of 4. 1, 2,
okay, good.
3, clap.
And then just to skip ahead, you hear the clicks here. So I'm basically going to use this, and these clicks are really important because it's going to help me line up everybody's sound. And with the instructions, the song actually starts on the third measure. So let's grab one of the videos to get it lined up. And we'll start with Melanie with the flute here. Now, by default, Audacity doesn't let you drag the video on here. It'll say it's missing something. And I'll show you in a moment here what to do when that happens. If you go to Edit and Preferences, it'll say that it's missing a library. And so there's a setting called Libraries here. And what it wants is the FFmpeg Import Export library. And it hopefully gives you links for not only downloading what that library is, but once you download it, how to add it to your Audacity install. If you follow the instructions through those links, I'm not going to go through that here, but it is very detailed on the instructions. It'll get you set up so you can just drag your videos right onto your project. Okay, So the first thing I like to do is to convert all of my sound to mono. Right now it's in stereo. That's why there's 2 sets of sound. This makes it so the final project, everybody will be in mono and it'll merge together without multiple channels. And you could always split those channels if you wanted to get fancy with it later. So to do that, I'm going to go to tracks. And this was after clicking on this track, so it's highlighted. And mix stereo down to mono. It's also good to do that for when you do have a lot of musicians submitting. This screen gets filled up really fast, as you'll see once we move to the save file that has all the other musicians in. You know, I'm only dealing with maybe 5 or 6 audio tracks. Normally on a project, I'll have, you know, 25 to 30. Okay, so right now you can see there's a spike in the sound right here, and that's actually Melanie clapping.
2, 3.
So what we want to do, and I'm going to hold down Control while I scroll in with my mouse, is we want to try to bring that clap in line with this other clap up here. And the tool I'm using here, it's called the time shift tool, which lets you slide your audio tracks forward and backward. We don't want to touch the click track because that's going to be our basis for all of the timing of the entire project. So we're just going to be moving our musician sound around. And then to really get that dead on there, you can use the selection tool to click right where that beat would be. And then when you use your time shift tool again and click on that track below, there'll be a line that lets you see that and line it up. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to line up perfectly, because as you'll find out later, not everybody always claps the exact same moment. So we do end up having to shift it around just a little bit more. So just to more fine tune that, I'm going to slide ahead to where the song begins. And I'm going to try to line this up closer to where these clicks are. So if I do that same selection tool and click on what would be the start of the song, or the 3rd measure of clicks, and then I'm going to drag her sound up to about the start of that. And then from here, back to my selection tool, I can click back a little bit and hit play to see how I did with the metronome clicks. So it sounded a little bit fast to me, so I'm going to take her sound and just shift it back a little bit and then try again. And that might even be a little bit behind, but that's okay. So that's it for adding one part. You would basically repeat that process, download the video file, drag the next video on for your next track, like so. And repeat that whole process for each video that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to a file I have prepared with everybody's video, or everybody's audio added. There we go. And I have that stored in a folder I called Mix. And I called it Phase 2 just because that's the next place I'm at for this project. So I don't need this open anymore. And let's see where I would be when I'm all ready to actually kick out my final sound. There we go. So I've got everybody's sound is in here. Everything is lined up and ready to go. I even still have my click track up there, but it's currently muted. But I can bring that on. And then again, I'm going to use Control and the mouse wheel to bring that out. So once everybody's sound is in there and lined up and you're happy with that, the next thing is to go through and set your volume levels and just make sure everything blends nice and well. Because sometimes you'll get a recording, like you can see this trombone sound looks really small compared to this trombone sound or this flute sound. And that's just because of the method of recording. It was a different type of microphone or setup. But that can all be adjusted using the volume levels here. So for instance, let's say this flute was really low, and let's just get a preview of how that's going to sound. So I'm not getting any flute, so I'm going to grab this and drag it up. Let's say maybe to 0, which is the kind of the neutral place for that sound. And then, as you saw, I was adjusting as it was playing so that I could get those levels right where I want live. And then once I'm happy with that, I'm ready to move on to actually putting out this as an actual music file. So the first thing I'll do is I'm going to get rid of the click track here so that I just have my audio files, and that'll remove the metronome. But I'm leaving in everybody's claps because I'm going to need that for synchronizing the video portion later. So if I select all, what I'm going to do at this point is go back to tracks. And just like we did when we were converting it to mono, I'm going to go to mix, but this time I'm going to do mix and render, which is going to turn it all these tracks into one. It's basically going to lock everything into place. Okay. And then just to make it sound really good, let me see. If you have unnecessary noise, you'll see like there was a late clap here that didn't come in at the same time as all the other claps. Audacity has a great tool for silencing stuff called Silence Audio Selection. And it looks like the wavy lines and then a blank spot and wavy lines. And that'll just get rid of that little spot. The next thing you'll notice is, and hopefully this comes through, there's a lot of background noise when you mix 5 or 6 different or 30 different even tracks together. Audacity has a tool for removing most of that. So what you do is find a spot where you know that there's going to be audio from all of the videos, usually right before the song starts. And then highlight it using the selection tool. And then under effects, we want noise reduction. There's a lot here, but noise reduction. And then it's a 2-stage process for noise reduction. The first you want to do is get a noise profile. That's why we selected that small spot. So I'm going to get that profile. Then I'm going to select the whole track and do that same thing again, noise reduction. But this time I'm just going to hit OK. I'm not touching any of the default settings. They seem to work well. And that's going to silence most of that and remove unnecessary noise from the rests in the song. But it shouldn't affect the audio quality too much. Now it still sounds a bit dry to me, so two of the things I like to do, one of the things I like to do is add a little reverberation or reverb. And again, that's under the effects and reverb. And these are the kind of settings that you'd want to mess around with to get the sound that you're looking for. Mainly the room size and reverberance. I'm not too sure what the rest of this does. There's people who know more about this. You can look up tutorials on it, but mainly the room size and the reverberance are the settings that I've messed with a little bit. And when you do that, it is going to blow your sound up a little bit. And if these waves get bigger than your track, you're going to have popping in the speakers. So that's why the last thing I do before I'm ready to export is an effect called amplify. And you would think amplify is going to make everything bigger, but in the case where the waves are too big, it actually will add a negative value automatically and bring it perfectly in line with where you want it to be for release. So it's not going to blow anyone's speakers, and it should just overall sound pretty good. So with that reverb, let's see how that sounds. So that sounds pretty good to me. All right. So at this stage, we actually need to start thinking a little bit ahead as how long we want our overall project to be. Do we want to allow time at the end of the project for musicians to bow, to put their instruments down, just to avoid everybody just kind of cutting off? as I mentioned before, this music track is going to dictate the entire length of your project. You can always cut out empty spaces later, but when you're putting it together, timing is crucial. So I'm going to go ahead and export this as an MP3. You could do WAV. I tend to do it as MP3 just to keep my file sizes down and to keep my computer working faster. The more uncompressed things you have, the slower things are going to be later on when you're trying to put everything together. But the compromise is you can set the quality really high so that it doesn't lose anything. And I already have a mix kicked out here. So normally I would just hit save, and then it would put my song out to that folder for me, which is going to be this finals folder. All right, and I see there were some questions here. Tom, do you want me to run through those real quick?
Yeah, sounds good, Scott.
Okay, so does Audacity allow you to adjust the volumes of a section rather than individual tracks? Can you group audio tracks into a single unit for final ensemble balance? You certainly can. So the same way that I mixed and rendered everything into one full track, you could just select a couple of individual tracks. So I'm going to just undo. Audacity is great about undoing back to almost any point. And let's say I have these two trombone parts here. If I click on one and then hold down Shift on the keyboard and click on the other to highlight them both, I would just go to Tracks, Mix, and Render. Assuming I'm already happy with the volume settings on both of those, it's going to give me a new track. It unfortunately does take the name out, so you can click on the little label here and change the name to Trombones. And then that individual section is now at the normalized volume that we were happy with, but you can then turn that section up and down as you wish. You can also get fancy with the stereo mix by having, maybe you want the trombones to be off to the back left a little bit in the sound. And then, put the tuba on the right side of the band. Just depending on how you end up setting up your final composition, if you've already planned where everybody's going to go, it's a nice little extra added trick for people, especially if they're using headphones to listen. Let's see. The next question, you mentioned you stripped out the video when placing into Audacity. Do you ever add the video back? And do you use a different program than Audacity? Yes, so there's two other programs we're going to look at. And there's no need to add the video back because we're going to be working with videos that we're going to actually take the sound out of, and we're just going to overlay those over this final music track that we created in Audacity. Let's see. Looks like you could mix all the flutes into a flute track. Yeah, so I just covered that. And then if noise is particularly a problem on one track, you could use the same noise reduction on it before mixing. You certainly could. I did it for everything all at once. But if you're having issues while you're working early on, you could absolutely go through and do that noise reduction on individual tracks. I don't know if it makes a difference on how many times you run it on everything. So like if you do noise reduction on an individual track, then you merge everything and run noise reduction again, it could adversely affect the quality. So that's why I tend to do it just all in one action. Let's see. Can you manually tune certain notes? How about auto tune, please? Yes, you can. If you find that someone is particularly out of tune, one thing that I've done is I've turned my speakers on and I'll play an individual part, and you can click solo here if you just want to hear one part. And then I'll put a tuning app on my phone and place that by my speakers so that as it's playing out on my speakers, it goes into the tuning app and I can see how many cents sharp or flat it is. And then you can either select an individual note or the whole track if you find that the whole thing's off because maybe they just didn't do any tuning at all. And then under effects, you have an option for changing pitch. It does not impact the speed of the track, it's just the tone. And then you have a percent change. And you just have to kind of figure out what the conversion rate is from cents to percent when doing that. But you can certainly tune that up or down a tiny bit. And I found in the past when I've done it, I haven't had to recently because we've gotten really good about tuning. I've only had to go, like 0.5% or 0.2%, and then just keep kind of trying it and undoing until I get it just right. And then if you had an entire pitch off, you could certainly change someone from one note to another. But going that drastic, it tends to have adverse effects on the overall sound quality. So it's best to just make sure everybody is tuned up. And Tom, we talked about this a little bit the other day. Ideas for tuning. If you don't have a tuner, you could simply go onto YouTube and look up a concert F, play it in your speaker and try to play along with it until you're nice and tuned. So it's a good thing to recommend to your musicians. And then
yeah, we talked about tuning actually to the track that you're playing to. If you're actually playing to one of those tracks, you want to be able to do that. You want to be able to play to that track and make sure you're in tune to that track.
Absolutely. If you have a reference track that everyone's using, then absolutely try to get to that as best you can. In this case, we're just using the metronome click, so getting everybody tuned to the same notes should work. Let's see. And then a question here, multiple passes through noise reduction might be an issue, though I haven't had a problem since Audacity is using the fingerprint of noise you selected. Good. What to remove? Its algorithm might work better for unusual noise on one track if it deals with separately from other tracks. So good. Thank you for the information. Okay. So where were we? We are now at a point where we have our audio ready to go and ready to start working on video. So there are lots of tools that you can use, lots of paid tools, no auto-tune. I don't like the sound of auto-tune myself. I don't know that the tools, especially in open source and free, are there yet to make it sound natural, unless you're going for a more robotic sound. Maybe you're doing the soundtrack from Tron. But it is possible, and there are plugins for it, but they're pretty rudimentary at this stage. And also, there's kind of a balance you have to strike when you're doing a performance like this. How much of the performance is the original musicians versus the person who's mixing it? And for me, it's really about making it sound as natural as possible to, seeing this group live and in person. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Bob Wepler. And that's kind of the point of open source software. If somebody has the skills and the ability, they can go and make plugins for these software that can eventually become adopted as features. So another reason that I really love using open source software. So I mentioned other tools, things like OpenShot is a free video editing suite. DaVinci Resolve has a free version that's pretty good. And then there's the paid options like Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro. But I wanted to gear this more towards, you don't have access to that, you don't have the resources to those paid options. So I've prepared a demonstration using all open source software. Let's see. So we're done with our sound here. The next thing we need to do is take all of our videos. And I mentioned the other software like OpenShot and DaVinci Resolve, and there are ways where you can take all of those videos and put them into one video project and put everybody into little boxes. But the more videos you add, it tends to slow down quite a bit. So to be more productive and to have things run smoothly, what I've found is taking each individual video and editing it so that it lines up with the click track, or not the click track, but your final audio product as its own separate video file, and then combining those in another program tends to run smoother and faster. So even on a slower computer, you should be able to get away with rather large projects. Now my PC, it's about 10 years old. It's had some upgrades, but at the time it was top of the line. So it does handle these things pretty well. But you wouldn't be able to do this on, say, like a Chromebook, maybe an iPad. I don't know much about Apple products, so you'll find this is going to be pretty PC centric. And I do apologize to the Apple users for that. I can tell you though that Audacity and the other programs that I'm going to show are available on Mac as well. So this tutorial will follow through for Mac users. Let's see. Okay, so that brings us to the next video editing software. So I talked about OpenShot and DaVinci Resolve. They're okay, they're good, but what I prefer to use is Blender. Now, if you've heard of Blender, you might think, well, isn't that 3D animating software? And you'd be right, that's what it's mainly used for. but Blender is very versatile, has a lot of different plugins built into it. And the one that we're going to be looking at when you first open Blender, and I'll show their website here, blender.org. When you first open it, you have under new file different options for general, 2D animation, sculpting, video effects. But the one I'm interested in here is video editing. I like Blender's video editing because everything is on one screen. If you've used Adobe Premiere Pro or Final Cut, they use a lot of different tabs and you have to go around for different things like editing and effects and sound. Everything's here in one place, and there's just these little panels for your project settings. Now, it is a little more hands-on as far as setting up your project, but once you get a workflow going, it goes pretty smooth. So for Blender, this is a brand new project, and it is 100% free. Thank you, Sarah. We're going to look at our, let's see, output properties, which looks like a little printer. And this is the only settings tab that we're going to need to look at to make sure that our project is in place. Resolution, you can manually set how big you want your video to be. 1920 by 1080 pixels. That's equivalent of 1080p. So if you're watching a high definition video on YouTube, it's probably going to be in 1920 by 1080. Now, for our individual videos, we don't necessarily want them that big, but we don't have to mess with this resolution sizes. We can just cut the percentage down to make it smaller. So for this project, I was doing things at 25% of the normal size because they're going to be a part of a bigger whole. So even though we're shrinking it down, we're not going to lose any quality because they're going to be smaller little windows on the final project. The next thing here is our timing aspect is frames. So frames is more of an animation term as opposed to, you know, the time for audio. But Blender uses video frames to figure out where everything goes. Oh, you're not seeing the side tab here. Let me try to bring this over. Is that better, David Miller? Okay, great. So just showing the resolution here, and then I changed the percentage of that total video size. So we don't know how many frames our project is going to be yet. So that's where we need to add our click track. Not our click track, but our final audio mix to find out. So for that, I'm just going to drag that from my folder right onto Blender. And that's going to add this green band here, which is going to be my audio file. So when you first drop a file in, all you see is just the green bar, but it gives you a little bit of information, how many frames it is overall, which is 1482, the name of the file. But that's not very helpful for sound. So under our view options here and show waveforms, we want to make sure we turn our waveforms on. And that's going to help us synchronizing our video to our audio. And when I do that, you can now see a little bit of a blurb here, but I'm going to grab this bar on the side here, which normally just kind of slides in and out. If you grab one of the dots at the top or bottom, you can zoom it up so it's nice and visible there. So this is actually the clap from everybody. And I'm going to just use my scroll wheel to pull in a little bit and see the actual song. So that's the whole song right there. You can zoom out some more. Let's see. So from this, I know that my project is going to be 1482 frames, at least right now. So that's where I can go up here and change my start frame as 1, my end frame 1482. And then that kind of opens up this whole area. You'll see there's a black line that terminates. That's where it's going to stop kicking out video when I go to render my project. So there's still some more settings I need to check here. Frame rate, it's up to you what you want your final frame rate to be. That's basically how smooth the project is. I've been doing all of mine at 30 frames per second. if you're looking for a specific, maybe a more cinematic look, like movies, I think are around 24 frames per second. So you certainly could go that route. I like it to be nice and smooth since it's being produced mainly for YouTube. So I'll do 30 frames per second. Now you'll notice what that did though is it actually changed my project a little bit. So my project is now 1852 frames instead of 1482 because now I have more frames packed into each second. So let's update that to 1852. Okay. Now we're going to need to set a place for our files to go once they're generated from Blender. And that's where this output comes in. And right now it goes to a folder called temp, which would just be on your main drive. But it's a good idea to change that to wherever your project files are. So I have a band projects folder here, my ACB demo, and I want my videos to go into my videos folder, but I've made a separate folder in my videos folder for the processed videos to go, and I just called it ready for OBS. And OBS is the name of the next software we're going to look at after Blender. And then this is where I would save it and just give it a name. And so we'll do the trombone track for the demonstration. So I'm just going to call it trombone. And you have to change that for each one of these videos that you're going to process. And then we also need to change the file format. Right now, if I were to try to render this project out, it would come out as just PNG or almost like JPEG images. So we want to do video. And there's a couple different options for video. The ones I always use for Blender is FFmpeg video. And then under encoding, I would change this to MPEG-4. But if you prefer to work in QuickTime, Blender can do QuickTime. It can do raw AVI. But the MPEG-4 seems to work just fine, and it gives a nice small file size for decent quality. I don't tend to mess with any of the rest of these settings, but you certainly can depending on what you're going for. Or if you read some tutorials on how to get a specific look, you can go through that. And then down here under audio, for now, we don't want any audio for these videos. It just takes up file size for audio that we're not going to use. All right, so I've got everything laid out. I've got my audio track here. Now I need to start, add one of my videos, and this is a process, again, that you have to do kind of one at a time. So I was going to do the trombone. So I'm just going to drag that right onto Blender. And I'll zoom this out a little bit so we can see. One thing I can't seem to get a handle on with this is it always puts the audio track, and you can tell because it has the waveform here, above the video. And I want to compare the audio from the two tracks. So what I'll do is I'm going to take my video track and I'm going to grab it and just drag it up above my audio. But one thing I have to be careful of is not losing what frame it was on. So as I'm holding it down, a number appears right here to tell me what frame this, what they call a strip, lands on or starts on. So I want that to be on 1. Then I'll go ahead and select both of my tracks, and I can do that by clicking on one and then holding down Shift and clicking on the other. And then I'm going to bring them down. Well, I'm going to try to bring them down. There we go. Again, lining them up on 1. There we go. And then from here, I can try to line this audio up between the two. So one of them is the actual trombone track of me playing. The other is our audio mix. So with both tracks selected, because we don't want to move one and not the other, I'm basically just going to grab this and drag it to the point that it kind of lines up with the project here. And there's a couple of different things I can use for a frame of reference. I can use the clap back here. So that's my clap on this track, and here's the clap down here. I can also use, if I start at the beginning of the song, I can line it up at the beginning of the song. Or I can even look at the end and make sure that the end lines up if there's any major rests throughout the piece. Another way to kind of get that exactly the way you want it, you can move the interface around a little bit to give you more view of the sound. And then this bar up top here with the time tells us what part of the preview it's going to show. I can click right in there to bring this nice blue line through the entire project and try to line that up with the start of the audio on the song. Right about there. And then I can drag my audio track or my video track back and forth to line it up with the start there. And then once you have it, jumped on me there. And this kind of slowness you're seeing, that's one of the problems I was talking about with adding more and more. The more videos you add, the slower it is because it has to load the video from all of those different video files that you have loaded, which is why I am recommending doing it one at a time. And then if you want to preview it to make sure it's lined up, spacebar will start playing, or you can just use this play button down here. Now, it may be choppy at first, but it will catch up and you'll be able to see if your audio and video are lined up. That's going pretty slow there. And then also, I apologize, my sound is coming out of my speakers, probably blowing out my mic. Let's see if it'll play smoother if I do it again. Yeah, it doesn't want to catch up for me, but that looks pretty good to me as far as just visually looking at where the audio lines up. And that's the main thing, as long as your video and your audio tracks are at the same place. So now we want to find a specific point in our guide or our song track where we want everyone to kind of fade in as a part of the video project. So I'm gonna, at this point, since I'm done lining up, I'm just gonna flat out delete the audio track for my trombone. So I just have video now. And when you click on a track, normally if you drag it, you're moving it forward and backward and getting it out of alignment. But at the very edges of each video strip or track, you can click and it'll tell you what frame that falls on, and you can drag just that part. And what that's going to do, that's going to be like when you're cutting something. Normally you would cut and delete what you don't need, but this is just dragging the video up to a point where I want everyone to start without moving the video. It's like deleting the earlier parts of the video without affecting the later parts. And so I'm going to find a point where I want everybody to come in. And so I'm thinking around frame 400. And then I'll have to remember that for each video that I do, that I want them all to start at 400. That way everybody kind of starts in at the same time rather than all at different times. Then I want to go look at the end and find a good endpoint for everybody. And it's hard because sometimes people will cut their video off before others. But I'm thinking maybe 1600. Frame 1600 is where I would want everybody to stop. Now, here's one of the features I really like about Blender's video editing. When you go to do transitions like fading in and fading out on programs like Adobe Premiere or OpenShot or other ones, you usually have to drag some kind of a transition bar onto it, or it's in the effects tab, it's kind of hidden. With Blender, if you just right click on your video track, they've got the fade setting right there, and you can do fade in and out. And then you can see these little shaded lines is showing where it's fading, the video is fading in. And if I go back here, I can kind of slide through the preview a little bit. There we go. Now it looks like I'm playing there, so something must have went wrong with the timing. Let's see. But then, yeah, there's the fade out. So assuming you have everything the way you want it, let's see, you're ready to actually render this video. I'm going to name this something else though, because I don't think I did something right with the video there. I don't want to overwrite my work here. Okay, so once you think you have everything where you want it to be, you go to this render option up top and render animation. And that's going to run through just the frames that we specified, which in this case was frame 1 through 1852. And it's going to do it at 25% of that HD resolution of the 1080p. and it's going a little slower than real time, which is not ideal, especially if you have a long song that you're doing. As I mentioned, this can be a time-consuming process. You want to plan for at least a couple of weeks to get everything done, especially if you have a large number of submissions. But when I did these five or six parts that I prepared for this project, I did it within a few hours because this was only about 30 seconds of music. So you could extrapolate from there, how long it would take depending on the length and number of musicians. All right, so once that all finishes, we would have, let's see, 152 or something. Good one. Okay, here's my actual project. You end up with a video. There we go. That starts off black up until the point when I told it to fade in. There it is. Oh, okay. No, I just had my instrument up already. This was already timed out the way it was supposed to be. And then at the end, it fades out. And again, there's no sound because we don't need sound on these individual videos. That's going to come once we combine everything in one. So just like with Audacity, this whole process would then just be repeated for everybody. You could use the same project file that you're working in and just simply click on and hit the delete key on the keyboard to remove that video, and then drag the next video that you want to work on. Maybe it's the conducting video or whatever you want to do to get that all set up and in place. But I'm not going to go through all of those. Any questions on this portion, which I would say is the kind of the prepping each video section? Let's see. Doesn't look like anything just yet, but keep them coming and we'll move on. So for now, I'm going to close Blender. Let's see. And I don't need to save this because all I was doing was kicking these videos out. Now, of course, you may want to keep it open until you verify that all of your videos are right. Otherwise, you have to redo everything on one or more videos. But those are the kinds of things that we kind of learn as we go. All right. So the next piece of software, and technically we could do all of what we're going to do in the next piece of software in Blender, but you run into those problems I mentioned where everything slows down the more videos you get. I've found a great option for compositing or putting all your videos together is called Open Broadcast Software, or OBS. There's the link to it. So this is a software, it's typically used by live streamers, people who demonstrate games or products, and they use it because you can set up scenes of effects, audio, all of these different things, almost like a virtual TV studio. And the thing I like about it is very good at handling many videos all at once on screen playing in real time. Even if you don't have the fastest computer, any recent computer should be able to do it. And if you run into where you've added too many videos, it starts to slow down, you could scale back and do, a quarter of the videos on one screen and then record that and then do the next set of videos and then combine it all into a mosaic. But for this project, it should all be pretty smooth. So this is OBS. Normally under scenes here, when the first time you open it, there wouldn't be anything listed here. These are just all scenes that I've set up that I use for various video conferencing, because you can feed your webcam into it and then send that webcam feed out to Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever video conferencing you use. So it's kind of unorthodox, but what I found for using it is in these virtual projects, if you just want to have a static screen with maybe some graphics on screen with your videos, it does a really good job at that. There is just a little bit of setup that goes into it for these projects. The first being making sure that your frames per second matches whatever frames per second you wanted to use in Blender. So I'm going to look at our settings and then under video, and then just changing this common FPS value. And that's really the only setup you'll have to do, is changing that to make sure it's 30 frames per second. I believe it defaults at 60, which you don't want to double your time on everything. So 30 is just fine. Okay, so I have a blank slate here. And what I'll do, the first thing I would want to do is add sound. So I want to make sure I have everything set up for my sound first. So I'm going to click on our sources. We have scenes and sources. Sources is going to be all of our videos and audio, graphics, anything you want to have in there. And there's all these different types of sources. But if I'm doing a song, I want to add a media source. And then when you create a new one, just make sure to give it a recognizable name, and I'll just call it To Joy. And then it gives you some settings for that. And we're just looking for a local file, which is going to be in our project. So band projects, ACB demo, and mix. Nope, sorry, finals. And then Ode to Joy mix. I've done that. I click OK. And then by default, you won't hear anything. And that's on purpose because OBS is usually sending its audio and video streams out to a streaming source. But if we go to our audio mixer here, where it says Ode to Joy, and click on settings, or the gear here, and go to advanced audio properties, we can choose the audio monitoring for Ode to Joy to monitor and output. And then that way, whenever this scene is active, that song will start playing right then. This is why it was important to time all of those videos to the song, because now we're going to add all these videos, and we want to be able to activate this scene, have the song play, and then the videos starting right when the song starts as well. So everything works in layers. So as you add things, they start on the bottom. They can be moved later. But let's say we want to have a nice background for our videos. And so I had gone out and just found a nice public domain image of a sheet of music. And I saved it in my project folder. So I'm going to add an image. And then under images, I have this music score. And then it's going to add that as a picture. And then, so every time you add a new source to OBS, you can just click and drag it wherever you want. You can resize it. There's even options for cropping, things that you can get into that are a little more advanced. But I'm just going to drag this so that it takes up the whole screen. And so we have this nice, classy music print background. Then I'm going to start adding my videos. So I'll go back here to add another source, media source. And I'm going to want to name these for whatever it is. It makes no bearing on the project itself. It's just for your reference. And then just like I did with the sound, I'm just going to go local file and browse. And then get into my videos. And then that other folder I made ready for OBS. And then I can find my Conductor video and hit open. And then when I hit OK, it's going to add him right up here. And then let's go ahead and add another one as well. And we'll add the trumpet. Make sure I don't overwrite stuff that I already have here. Yeah, I already did that. About 2. And as I'm working on similar media types, it's going to stay in the same folder I was in before, so it'll go smoother now. So we'll say trumpet. Okay. Now you notice Tom's already moving here. I'd pause the music. If I go ahead and unpause it, let's see. There we go. So as I activated that scene, you can hear the noise from the song playing in the background from the track. And everything, they should fade in at the same time because I've preset everybody to come in Blender. And there we go. So everything's nice and lined up. And then as you add videos, if you click on each one, you have this play button up here. You can pause them. That way you have time to go through and basically arrange them in whatever order you want. With a small ensemble, I don't want to take up the whole screen because I just wouldn't be able to fit, you know, the 5 or 6 in a nice square position. So I've gone more abstract. But if you do have, you know, 30 musicians, you can just grab the corners of these, shrink them down, and they'll kind of snap together and try to get everybody in across the bar. If you have, you know, that many, you can fit them. Don't stress about trying to make everything fit perfectly. Leave some space on the edges if you can, if you need to, because it's very rare that you're going to have the exact number of videos to fit that whole panel. So with that being said, after I'd gotten these added and then all the other ones, this is what the final product would look like. Let me just make sure. Oh, yeah, this should be good. Unless I have this paused. I do. All right, let's try again. Make sure everybody is set here. Okay, let's try again. Now, there's a lot of blank space here, but we're going to cut that out before we put our final video together. The sound is coming through my speaker now. Hopefully it's coming through the microphone, but everybody's nice and synced up. Usually the trombones are the easiest way to see if your videos are synced to your sound, because those slides going to be moving around. So now we have this. We're ready to actually record this so that it kicks out, and it actually is recorded in real time rather than spending a lot of time rendering. This is, again, another strength I think that OBS has. Let's see. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a blank scene and put it up at the top because I want to start from black. And then I'm going to do the recording, I'm going to click on my scene that has everybody in the song. And then I'm just going to come over here and click start recording. And so what that does is it records everything that's currently displayed in this preview up here. It's not going to get these blue lines that show up when I move over it, though. That's just for reference. But I'll let the whole project record. And then when it gets to the very end, I'll stop. And again, keeping in mind that we're going to be able to trim off the beginning and end, anything we don't want for the final product. Just let it play through here. And waiting. Once everybody fades out, I'll hit stop. There we go. Stop recording. Now, one thing I didn't mention before is when Tom sent me his conducting video, his camera recorded mirrored, so his logo was backwards on his shirt here. And there are a bunch of different places that can be changed. It could be fixed in Blender, and it could be fixed here in, yes. In OBS as well, just by right-clicking on it, and then under transform, and then you have flip horizontal and flip vertical. So I want to flip horizontal. So this is actually how he looked when I first got it, but I'd already fixed it when I was in Blender. But again, you can fix it right here. And I've actually spent a good deal of time looking up videos of people playing the flute to make sure I have my flute players are right-handed or not, because, you know, their hand might cover up the logo on their shirt, or looking for text in the background, or logos on T-shirts, you know, that have text, and using those clues to flip them. But the last thing I would want to do is take a left-handed trumpet player and make him look right-handed unknowingly. So get to know your band, get to know their handedness, especially if you're going to be doing these projects. All right, so we recorded our project in OBS. We're done with OBS for now. And when OBS records, I'm not sure about Macs, but on Windows, everything goes to the videos folder. And I have a ton of different video projects that I've recorded. But here is the video that OBS kicked out, which is kind of raw, but that's good because we're going to be able to do whatever we want with it now. And I'll just skip ahead a bit here. And you can see it's nice high definition quality, everything that was on that preview at 1080p. So this is where I need to bring Blender back, because you could use Blender or you could use whatever your favorite video editing software is for this portion of it. But again, I've gotten accustomed to using Blender. Just again, no frills, everything's in one place. It's just a matter of doing that that initial setup. So video editing. So I'm going to take my video that I created in OBS, drag it into Blender. And then with Blender, it doesn't just take audio and video, it also takes image files. So using the venerable Microsoft Paint, let's see, I created a title and closing card. Some people, they want their videos to start right on the musicians playing, which is great. You could even use OBS to overlay text of your song and copyright information. When we do our projects, I like to do a slide before and after. So I've created just a really simple title card, which includes the name of the piece, the arranger, composer, and then we did secure permission from CL Barnhouse Company to use this arrangement of Ode to Joy, copyright 1992, Birch Island Music Press. And I believe Sarah made the contacts on that to get that permission, and they were gracious enough to let us use this for this demonstration. So big thank you to CL Barnhouse. So I have these pictures that I made just using a standard video resolution, and then a closing with some credits for our conductor and instrumentalist. You could also include copyright information here, information about your band, anything you want really. And then actually, if you have band members who are artistic and can create, slides for you with, great text or even, calligraphy, use those skills, have them send you something to incorporate into your project. It's just a matter of just getting an image and then dragging it right into Blender. And then you can set the timing on this. Let's see. It was covered pretty in depth in part 1. So the question was, can Sarah talk a bit about acquiring that distribution license, or was that covered in part 1? Did you have some information on that, Tom? Because you do that for our other performances.
Yeah, it really just comes down to contacting the publisher. And yeah, Sarah has some great information on that on the ACB website. So you can check into that. And for us, it's always just been, going to the publisher and then asking permission, and a lot of them will have a space where they already have their licensing agreements. Sometimes they'll just have a statement saying, if you're doing a piece by this person, under this publisher, if they own many different rights, then they might just say that's fine to do, or they may charge you a small fee for doing it. So, but yep, asking permission.
Excellent, thank you, Tom. So I dragged my title slide into the project, and then I'm gonna, just like we did before, I'm gonna grab the just the edge of it so that I can shorten that to what I want. And I'm looking for, let's see, timing, probably about 5 seconds, which you can see up top here. Yeah, so roughly 5 seconds of time for the opening slide. Oh, good, thank you, Sarah. Let's see, so I'm gonna click on, hold my video, hold down Shift and move this all out to the end of my slide. And you see my project area is short here because I started a whole new one. I don't have my number of frames just yet. I'm not going to worry about entering the end frame until I know how long my project is. So as of now, I've got my opening slide, and that transitions into the playing. And I'm going to find a spot using this timeline where I want the actual project to start, which is going to be just before everybody fades in. And then, again, use that tool at the edge to drag it up to that point. And I'll do that with the audio as well. So that's at 445, 444. Maybe we'll bring that one up to the same. There we go. And then I'm going to click on each one, again, holding shift, and drag that whole thing back to go end to end with our little credit slide there. And you could do this end to end, or you could have the credits up above so that you could do a nice little crossfade effect. Just whatever look you're going for. All right, so that's the title. I've got the start of the song timed out to where I want it. Now I'm going to go to the end of the video, and I'm going to find the point where everybody fades out, which would be right about here. I go too far, and they all disappeared because the video's ended in OBS. So I just want to end it where there's still, at least the black boxes are visible. And then bring my video in line with that. And that's at frame 1392, so I'll do the same with the audio. There we go. And then from here, I can get my credit slide added on. So I'll just drag that again right on. Now, here's another issue with timing, specifically if you're publishing to YouTube. There's this, at the end of each video on YouTube, they have the option of putting in links. So like a link to your band's channel or a link to whatever your last song was. And there's about 20 seconds that maximum YouTube will allow those to appear. So that's where you would use to time out your credit slide or whatever you want the last thing to appear. So I'm going to go ahead and just to be a little more methodical about it, with my image selected, under the settings for that image, I'm going to go to time and pull that down. And I want the duration of that to be 20 seconds. Now, if you just put in a number, it's going to think you're talking about frames. But if you put in a time code 0:0:20, it will not work. Let's see. Actually, you know, it's easier if I just grab it and drag it and then watch that duration change until it gets to 20 seconds. So I need to go a little bit further. And hopefully that's not 20 minutes. I don't know, maybe it is. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is a really short project, so that's right. So there we go. Roughly dead on 20 seconds. 30 frames per second, that's 600 frames, so that makes sense. You can get pretty good at math doing this, or you can just drag things around until it looks right. I don't want to force anyone to become a mathematician. Okay, so once I've got everything timed out the way I want it, I can then figure out where the end of my project is, which is going to be on frame 1994. And then I can go up here to frames for my output and change that to 1994. Now, if remember before, when we did our resolution, we changed it to 25% because we were just doing just a little bit small windows. Now we're doing the whole thing. This is going to be a big project, so that's 100%, 1920 by 1080. Or if you wanted to go a little bit smaller, you could do 1280 by 720 for 720p, but it looks really nice at 1080, 1920 by 1080. Then we have to set up our output again, just like we did before. And in this case, I'm going to send this to my finals folder within my project. Give it a name, Ode to Joy Video. And then set up those video settings again. So file format, FFmpeg, encoding, MPEG-4. And this time I do want sound. And then there's different options to use. I, again, stick with MP3. It's familiar. It works well. And then I don't need to change anything here because it's already at a good quality. Once all of that is set, I'm ready to render this whole thing out. So I'm going to go up here to render, animation. Now it's nice and big. It's actually going a little faster than it was before, just because it's in its native video resolution. When we shrunk it down, it's kind of unintuitive for it to take longer when you're doing a smaller video, but it's having to shrink that video down, so it is technically doing more work rather than just leaving it as is. So while this is going, are there any questions? So I'm going to let this render out and show the final project here. One thing I can also talk about was the other types of video projects you can put out. So say if you have a band that can send you just audio and you don't have enough to do a video project, you could use things like Windows Movie Maker to make a slideshow to where you just choose the audio track or maybe a past recording that you've done as your audio backdrop, and then it'll let you select, all the pictures that you want to use. Just get all the pictures you want into one folder, select those, and then just get them timed out how you want. And then you could do like I showed with the title and closing cards, and just slip those as the first and last slides. And then you have something, relatively quick and simple that can go right out to YouTube.
Scott, one question that had come up.
Yeah.
How much memory do you need to make videos?
My setup here, I have a lot, but I only use one hard drive for that, which would be, it's only a 500 gigabyte hard drive that I've been doing all these projects on. And that's pretty standard when you buy either an off-the-shelf PC for your main drive. But I would say no less than a 500 gigabyte main hard drive. And then as far as the type of hard drive you're looking for, don't settle for anything less than a solid state drive. There's the older hard drives, IDE drives, which they're great for storage, but for this type of labor intensive work, you would definitely want solid state because it works a lot faster. It doesn't require a metal disk spinning around inside like the old hard drives. It's all just electronic. Even more advanced than that, there are these drives called NVMe solid state drives that are even just light years ahead of that. And so if you can work your project on a drive like that, it's going to speed up everything, even more so than a faster processor would. Let's see. So I think, yeah, it's done. There was one thing I did not do, is I didn't do any of the fading that I wanted to do, but that was just like I showed before, right-clicking on whatever element and then going fade and fade in and out. And that just lends your project a little bit of class. And you can do that on each part. And that way it starts to black, fades in nice and smooth, and then fades out and moves to the next element. So for that, what I'm going to do now is go ahead and play this final product that we got here. But I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to reshare with video optimization turned on so that it plays nice and smooth here. And here we go. And that would be ready for YouTube. I would probably redo it again with the fading, but you find that with these projects is you do a lot of iteration. You do things and you redo things until it looks just right. How much RAM memory? My system, I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. You could get away with 8 or less. It's just gonna run slower depending on that configuration. But I would never do less than 16 gigabytes myself for all the stuff that I do. There's a question on the trumpet player seems to be filmed in selfie mode. So you mean where he can see himself on his camera? Can you elaborate on that, Mark? Do you mean, what do you mean by it doesn't look right? I'll pull that up again here. Is it like a fisheye effect that you're seeing? But as far as, going for a specific look, there's other things. I think DaVinci Resolve is a good program. You see a lefty? You see. Ah, yeah. So I did go over that before. As far as flipping the videos, yeah, I probably did get that wrong. I'm a trombone player, so I have a lizard trombone brain. So in my mind, that looked right, but I should have looked up some images. I'm pretty sure he's right-handed. But there was nothing in the picture or the video that he sent that I was able to use to indicate that, other than, do they actually make left-handed trumpets, which I think they do. I don't know. But yeah, so that was something where you could fix that in OBS or Blender. But you would want to do that at a stage before you get to your final product. Let me see. Let me pause the song playing here and look at the trumpet player. And that was just as simple as right-clicking on that particular video element and going to transform and then flipping horizontal. Thank you, Gene. Appreciate that. So for the sake of the demonstration, let's say that he just did happen to be left-handed. Thank you, Phil. All right. So now that we have a video that we're ready to send up to YouTube, let's see. And actually, this is a good opportunity for me to correct a mistake that I made during last week's presentation when I was talking about uploading videos. So you make sure you're logged in as your band's YouTube account, which today I'm not seeing it here for some reason. So I'll just do it on mine. That's fine. Upload video. And then from here, you would just drag your final video onto YouTube, and it'll start its upload process, and you can start the process of titling it. Telling your viewers about your video. You could include things like the copyright information here, the composer, if you want to include the names of the people that are playing. That would all just go in the description. Once the video is uploaded, you can select a thumbnail, or you can upload your own picture. So again, leaning on your band members that have those skills to make some nice graphics, or just select one of the select frames that it gives you to choose from to be your thumbnail. That's what people will see when it shows up in the sidebar or when they search for it. Audience, I talked a little bit about COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. So unless your video is made specifically for children and for a child audience, make sure to choose no. And that way you won't get disclaimers on your video about it being children's programming. And again, this does not mean your video is going to be marked as mature. It just means it's not going to show up under, like for child accounts that have parental controls on it. They say they can only have videos up to a certain age group. It's not going to limit you to that. So it should be just about ready to let us select a thumbnail, but I'll look at one of these other elements here. From details, I'll go to video elements. And then when I talked about that credit screen, giving it 20 seconds, this is why that was important. So I want to add an end screen. And so I've already got my credits here, but I can do things like select a template and have my YouTube channel and then a link to a past video if I want. And you can cycle through these by clicking on these items. And then select any video from your channel to be your last video. Of course, these are my my videos because I couldn't get into the band account for some reason, but I'll look at that later. And then a link to your channel. And there's other things you can add if you want to get more fancy with it. And then you can drag these elements back so that they only show up on the credit screen, or maybe a little bit later after the credit, so that they don't overlap anything. And then I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to back to details real quick here. There we go. So now I have some options for thumbnails. So I could select one of these existing thumbnails to show up for my video. And I like that one. So I'll leave that one on there. And then finally, visibility. Save or publish. So you have a few different options here. So the thing I mentioned about correcting last week was I said to publish your Conductor video as private. You can, but you have to then enter all the emails from everybody that you want to send it to, which can be arduous. What I should have said was to publish it as unlisted. That way, anybody who has the link, which you would send in your email, can view the video. And oftentimes when I'm doing a new project, if I want Tom to review it, Tom, our conductor, I'll publish it as unlisted at first, and then send him the link to have him look at it. And then when I'm ready to publish it, I'll come back into the video settings and change it to public. I don't want to make this one public because we don't have those permissions as far as I know. Beyond the demonstration, I didn't think to ask, but I'll list it as unlisted, and then I can remove it later for demonstration purposes. The other option, if you're doing public, is to set a premiere where you can schedule it to be available, say Friday night at 8 p.m. And then there's a countdown on that video and everybody gets notified that's subscribed to your channel. And that's kind of fun. And when it actually does play, it does this whole thing where you can have a live chat with everybody who's watching at the time. We'll go ahead and do this as unlisted, but normally you would just do it as public and then you're ready to go. So I'm going to save that. My video is published. It's unlisted, but it is on the channel and ready to go for whenever I'm ready to make it public. And then you can see what it would look like up on YouTube here. It already knows that it's high definition, so it's playing it at 1080. And then it's in the wild, ready to go. And then just for, again, demonstration purposes, I'll go ahead and share this link in the chat. It'll be available for today before I take it down, just again, because I don't want it to be distributed. Let's see. Is that okay, Sarah? I defer to Sarah, our copyright expert. Oh, she may have stepped away. But otherwise, that is it. Do you want to open up for questions, Tom?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and see if there's anybody else who has a couple of questions. Great presentation, just a lot there, you know, and I'm sure you could, I'm sure you could start a class in doing this, guide people through, but a lot of good information there. Yeah.
Thank you. I have considered doing some YouTube tutorials on this type of material just because it's something that I have been doing a lot and seem to be getting good at. So, you know, I may even move into the demonstrating how to do the more complicated videos that we do for our band with all of the motion and the animatics and things like that. So that may be forthcoming.
Yeah. Well, great, Scott. Yay.
Oh, good. Thank you, Melanie.
We got I got the, so you guys have the link to, you can see our progression of how we actually started, how Scott started with ours and the progression. And it's just been, it's fun to see. So.
Yeah, Otador was the first one that we did, which it was nice to go back and revisit it using all of the current methods that we've developed over this time.
Yeah, very much, very much. Okay, I think with that, I will turn it back over to our ACB president, Susan Sands.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today for this very practical and informative session of ACB Connects. On behalf of the Association of Concert Bands, I would like to offer our most sincere thanks to Scott Hosner for sharing his expertise and knowledge to help demystify this process of producing a virtual project. Also, a special thanks to our moderator, Tom Seaton, and to the entire ACB Connects production team. The next session of ACB Connects continues the virtual concert series with virtual performances, tips from the U.S. Army Field Band on Sunday, April 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. This session will cover topics ranging from simple versus professional equipment, audience, video capture considerations, planning the release, platforms for maximum viewership, cross-posting, sharing, hashtags, engagement, advertising, marketing, and much more. In the May session, we'll be featuring ACB directors discussing live concerts during COVID, thinking outside the stage. Please check the ACB website for registration information and for all the details pertaining to the upcoming sessions. Every year, ACB holds an informational meeting for the entire membership of the association. Usually this happens at the National Convention, but this year it will be a virtual event hosted by the ACB Connects production team on Sunday, April 25th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Every ACB member is invited to attend. This invitation also extends to everyone who belongs to an ACB member band. During this session, there'll be time for greeting your friends from across the country and from around the world. There'll be a showcase of bands where you can catch up with other member bands. And if you would like to have your band included in this showcase, please submit a photo and a brief statement about your band to the ACB editor at editor@acband.org. Details for submission can be found on the ACB website. During this meeting session, you'll hear from our current officers and board members. You'll witness the new president, Gail Brechting, the new president-elect, Beth Steele, and new board members, Michael Birch-Pesses, Larry Lang, and Tom Seaton, as they take their oaths of office. To complete the program, awards will be presented. We'll hear from the Santa Fe, New Mexico 2022 Convention Committee, and we'll welcome a special inspiring guest speaker. Be sure to mark your calendars to save the date for this special event that you won't want to miss. For the links mentioned today and to access all previously recorded sessions of ACB Connects, please visit our ACB website homepage at acbands.org. You'll also find information about becoming an ACB member, details on future sessions of ACB Connects, and a wealth of resources. We'd also love to have you connect with us on Facebook, where you'll see information and timely posts. Thank you for being with us today. We'll look forward to seeing you again on Sunday, April 11th at the next session of ACB Connects, when our series on virtual concerts continues with the members of the U.S. Army Field Band. Until then, take care and be safe.